Mm. Hey. All right. Hey, welcome to Talk Politics, the only show where you don't just watch the news, but can help make it. Think of it like this: every Tuesday at 8:30, you can join us for conversation amongst friends about politics. We'll cover the questions posed in our Talk Politics page, cover the big things going on nationally, add commentary, and for those watching, we'll conclude with state politics. If you are watching, make sure to like, subscribe, share, do everything in your power to make sure that people know that we're really talking politics. So if you're in the chat, make sure to drop a line. Always great to hear that participation. In the meantime, man, we'll get right to it with what you guys were covering with Pulse of the People. All right, great. So, Pulse of the People, what are you guys talking about? What is it that you guys want to hear about or discuss? I posed the question, should we decouple from China? That seems to be the hot topic going today, and something that most people believe that we can do. Most people here, we have 23 votes. And most people actually believe that, yes, we should decouple from China without adding any specifics. Someone added something else. Yes, but it can't happen overnight. And I, of course, said no. But our wise commenter and loyal friend of the show, Ray, said we need to distance ourselves in a way that does not adversely affect our own economy and even sovereignty. Examples are abundant. And so he mentions how all these things are coming from China. And if we were to try to distance ourselves, we would have very many bad problems. In fact, he says we must begin to reestablish our independence. And I think that's true if we're going to have a serious conversation about decoupling from China, but we really can't have that conversation right now because it doesn't appear that anybody's all that serious about it. We most definitely don't have the workforce here in the U.S. to be able to do so, and it doesn't appear that we will have that anytime in the near future. I personally said, no, I don't think that we should decouple from China because I don't think it's possible. I don't think that, or if it is possible, it's not going to do anything to help us mediate the tension between the United States and China in a way that doesn't result in war. I think that the best outcome would be for the U.S. and China to avoid war, to maybe modify agreements and treaties that disallows the Chinese, for example, from stealing our IP and stealing our information. I think that would be important, but we shouldn't decouple from China because not only is there so many benefits to China, but there's just global benefits in general. where by partnering with China, we're able to, one, make sure that they don't realign with Russia or some other group in the Eastern Hemisphere. And it also stops them from building stronger ties with other nations that are hostile to U.S. interests. And so to decouple from China, something going to push them one way and further penalize our citizens here, right here in the U.S. So I'm a big no, but the people are for it. What do you guys think? Should we decouple from China? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't even think it would be possible because, again, we don't even really have the infrastructure here to even be able to do it. But hey, sometimes the people rule. You guys, if you're listening, tell me why I'm wrong. Should we decouple from China? The people also mention. I try to include something about sanctions here. So I've recently been reading about sanctions, and really what's going on with international sanctions is that you have the United States sanction all these foreign business to help give the U.S. a unnecessary and unfair competitive advantage. And then it's causing all this frustration with international leaders. And it's essentially making it more difficult for the United States to find any common ground or create new allies because we're sanctioning so many countries' big businesses. And so what I wanted to know is, do you support the heavy use of sanctions? I didn't include a nifty poll here, but we did fortunately have one gentleman named Mike. Hope you're doing well out there, Mike. The current way we incentivize imports over exports is not sustainable and is shown to leave U.S. vulnerable, as exhibited during the pandemic. We need to incentivize foreign investment on our land, not foreign imports. I think that's true to some degree. I don't think it would be bad if we did more importing here in the United States. Importing alone in and of itself isn't a bad thing, particularly if the goods imported are used to build things that's going to be more cost effective for more citizens. That doesn't mean it's automatically empowering foreign nations. It means in a lot of ways we're empowering ourselves if we can get cheaper goods. But we're also, it's questionable as to whether or not we are really prioritizing foreign imports here in the United States when we have such a vast tariff regime. So, hey, I don't support sanctions. I think they're bad. I think we should increase imports. But I'm open to being proven wrong. If you guys want to debate, hop into the chat right here. We'll debate. Should we use sanctions, which are basically taxes on foreign businesses? And you guys are talking about, well, we're talking about all it will take 5 defections to vote for any Biden spending priorities in the upcoming Congress. Knowing this, do you think Republicans will be able to block Biden's spending plans? Of course, I don't think so, and it doesn't appear that we'll be able to do that. Instead, I believe that there will be Republican defections that stop individual people, or the majority of Republicans from blocking Biden spending plans. I think we should all embrace, or at least prepare for vast spending plans in the future. And so therefore, it's not really going to be radically different, in my estimation, from the last Congress. We'll wait and see. But again, if you disagree, let us know in the comments. Say, are Republicans going to be able to block Biden's spending plans? What do you think? You think they are, or do you think that they're not going to be able to? Let me know in the comments, man. Eager to get that going. Lastly, biggest political surprise of the year? Well, it appears that there is no biggest political surprise. The gentleman mentions nothing is surprising if you are paying attention. And I think there's a great deal of truth to that. Of course, fewer things are surprising if you know what it is that's going on. But I think, for example, what we saw in the PA House, that would be a big political surprise. Where now in the Pennsylvania House, for example, we have an independent, perhaps the first ever, I'll have to check in the records, the first ever independent Speaker of the House. Big surprise. Big surprise. So that's that, man. The pulse of the people. It seems like, well, as we get out, have December and into January, we're still getting people springing back to life. The pulse of the people. Growing a little dead, I suppose, but I hope everybody feels better and gets well soon. But in the meantime, we are going to go to national nonsense, national news. But before we get to that, make sure to help us out. Buy us a cup of coffee at the link below, ko-fi.com/Reichenbach Media. Buying us a cup of coffee will help us reach more people and be able to have better, broader, and more deep political conversations with even more people. So go to ko-fi.com/Reichenbach Media. Donate today. If you're out there. If you're not, hey, I can't help you. I'm doing all the things that I can to make sure we're staying up to date with what's going on, particularly with the national nonsense. So, hey, what is going on nationally? Let's find out here. We got to know what it is that's going on nationally. It looks like one thing that happened was we're seeing Trump's tax returns come out. This is one of the few stories that flew under the weather. Trump's tax returns being out in the public. And as the author of the Wall Street Journal mentions, it is indeed a breach of privacy. Whatever happened to privacy for elected officials? Just because you're elected, that doesn't mean that you should be considered less than human. And this happened 4 days before the majority was lost. And, well, that's what happened. And so now we have to ask ourselves, is anybody safe? If they're willing to stop Trump, for example, and leak his tax returns with 83,000 more IRS agents, how do we know they wouldn't do the same to ordinary citizens? They did that during the Tea Party era. During the Tea Party era, the IRS denied nonprofit status to potential political competitors. How about that? And here we have it again, but apparently people don't. Well, in this case, it's not a leak, but it's kind of normalizing behavior that gets more and more people to surrender their private tax information. But that's not it. That's not just it. We also have vaccines fueling COVID variants. In our national news nonsense column here today, the virus appears to be evolving in ways that evade immunity. And so if you really stop to break it down and think about it, according to this article from the Wall Street Journal, the XBB variant of COVID is actually causing more people to get ill in part because they were getting vaccinated. So we now have all these variants of COVID because so many people got vaccinated. Such rapid and simultaneous emergence of multiple variants with enormous growth advantages is unprecedented. This has never happened before. So we have a virus mutating faster, more quickly than ever before. And yet, hey, people are saying, well, perhaps we should slow down on the vaccine talk. Sounds like a big deal to me, right? And it should be to you. Let us know, hey, I don't like this vaccine policy, or hey, we should get more vaccines so we can have more variants. Let us know. What are your thoughts? Should we have more vaccine, or is it getting out of hand? Okay. Trying to hear from y'all. But yeah, we don't know, man. More people. So a Cleveland Clinic study tracked its healthcare workers found that bivalent vaccines reduce the risk of getting infected by 30%. But, well, in another case, people wearing masks, well, they were more likely to get boosted. So they say that, but then immediately afterwards, notably workers who had received more doses were at higher risk of getting sick. Those who received 3 or more doses were 3.4 times as likely to get infected as unvaccinated. Major red flag. And this is it. This is the story that today's episode is named after. Hey, Biden and McConnell tomorrow are ready to tout supposed infrastructure investments. And part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this story is because I know, so for those of you just joining, Biden and McConnell touting infrastructure investments on Wednesday. And part of the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because I think that there should be a distinction here. Okay, is it bipartisan to tout such an investment, or is it backstabbing? Are these two individuals going behind the backs of the people, spending their money on things that they don't know, and then threatening to tax them at a future date? To me, that seems like backstabbing, if that's the case. What do you guys say? Should we continue to spend money endlessly and forever and call it not backstabbing, or should we be proud that two people are willing to work together to spend people's money? I know where it is that I stand, but I'm looking to hear from you. So McConnell's expected to attend an event with Biden. Mike DeWine, governor of Ohio, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, and Senator Sherrod Brown. We learned recently from White House Communication Director Herbie Ziskin. And they're all proud because it's supposed to replace a bridge with this $1 billion spending package. Will it? I don't know. How long will it last? Nobody knows. Hopefully not long, so that way politicians can have another opportunity to spend more money, right? So hey, what do you guys think, man? Is this really bipartisan, or is it another backstabbing measure? Personally, I don't like it when politicians celebrate anything. Why should they? I don't think that we always have to go before the American people to celebrate, particularly with all that's on the line in our international economy and with all the conflict around the globe. What is there to celebrate? A recession. They seem to be signing the shows to keep their political positions. I think that's true to a degree, Bill. That's right. Not only are they willing to sell their souls, they're willing to sell ours, Bill, by just continuously spending, and then they get together and they're able to chum it up for a big photo op and pat themselves in the back and say, well, see, Republicans and Democrats aren't so bad after all. We're bipartisan. We're bipartisan leaders, Jack, and if you don't like it, well, too bad. We're going to tax you anyways, or threaten to nuke you, as Eric Swalwell once mentioned. I mean, see, and this is why it is that's so shocking. you have those individuals celebrating. Okay, they're out there celebrating this vast spending package, and yet we have a headline right here that says Congress and the Federal Reserve could be setting us up for economic disaster. Well, golly gee whiz. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? And so there's pressure by Senator Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren to stop raising interest rates. And heck, we'd all like to deal with a lot lower interest rates for sure, particularly those who are looking to get into the home ownership market. But if those interest rates aren't going to be raised now, when are they going to be raised? Is it going to happen tomorrow? No. Next month? Probably not. But here's what I predict. You can mark my words on this. Interest rates will be raised in 2024. Most definitely if Joe Biden wins. And potentially even if he loses. You see, these guys are just kicking the can down the road only to make it somebody else's problem. And apparently people aren't paying attention. People have no clue. Well, hey, I'm just going to spend all this money. I'm going to let the government take care of me. Heck, I'm going to let the government just print out 4,155 page bills and just act like it's cool. Well, things will be cool until things get a lot worse. We're most definitely headed for that direction. That's right, Bill. They label us extremists when conservatives are trying to get spending under control. We somehow need to overcome that narrative. Hey, I agree with you, Bill. 100%. I think we do need to change the narrative. In fact, I actually think that what's been going on in the United States for the last 100 years has been extremism. This idea that we can spend for however long we want because we're the world's military leader is absurd. Because not only were we the world's military leader, we were the world's economic leader. But I don't think that we can count on both of those things going forward. For one, we can't be the world's military leader with a failing economy. And we can't we can't have a successful economy until we cut back on some of the military spending, some of which is people have no idea of where trillions of dollars of military spending is going. So, well, prepare for the worst. And if you want to help me prepare for the worst and help other friends in our community prepare, go to ko-fi.com and buy us a cup of coffee. Hey, make sure that we're able to wake up in the morning, put on a great show for you, and get more people involved. Just go to ko-fi.com/Reichenbach Media. Click the box. Now, a cup of coffee is only $3. Dump it in there, and then we'll be able to reach even more people. So for those of us, or for those just joining, we were just talking about Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell chumming it up. Before we get to the headline, Congress and the Federal Reserve could be setting us up for economic disaster. Well, you bet. They're busy chumming it up over an infrastructure bill. And what's going to happen is they're not going to raise interest rates now, basically, but they'll probably do it after the election just to prolong the agony. Doesn't sound like a deal to me. And heck, neither does the U.S. cable that warns of major barriers tracking Ukraine aid. The State Department cable surfaces amid growing calls for strict oversight of the money and weapons flowing to Ukraine. Okay, so this is exactly what it is that's been said all along. And now, because Politico releases it, now it's a valid point. Okay, but what's being said is American officials are turning to everything from blockchain technology to Ukrainian soldiers for help as they struggle to track billions of dollars So we can't have student loan forgiveness. We can't make sure that Social Security is solvent, but we can commit more than 50 billion to Ukraine. And we can make sure that we have no way of knowing where that money is. Has the cable signed by U.S. Ambassador Bridget Brink. Okay. So, I don't mean to be all doom and gloom for sure, but I don't see how anybody can look at this situation and circumstance and say, I really trust our leaders with spending. These guys are leaders. These guys deserve to represent us in Congress. Well, I think 60% or more just want politicians to get along. I don't think it's as much about policy anymore. Well, yeah, right. No, that's true. But when you just get along, then you're going to just go along with whomever comes up with the worst idea. And that's why we really ought to normalize some kind of dissent or being disagreeable. It's the people who are willing to stand up and disagree who are the ones who are going to be on the front lines of fighting for freedom. It's not going to be the nice guy who hugs people and agrees with people all the time. That's not leadership generally. Being too agreeable is not a great leadership quality. And it's not something that should be incentivized or praised. People agree too much. And more often than not, when there's too much agreement, you can almost guarantee something shady or bad is happening behind the scenes. And when that does happen, who has to pick up the tab for it? It's the taxpayer. Oh, hey, we all have to get along socially, so nobody can be honest and tell the truth because that could hurt feelings. Well, yeah, it could. But I would personally much rather deal with hurt feelings than a hurt wallet. Can't start a family, have kids, or enjoy life when you owe all this money to a government that, quite frankly, never stops taking your money. And hey, maybe we will get a shakeup in the House. We do have people standing up and willing to stand up against. Yeah, right. A lot of people are passive and not fighters, right? And that's what's frustrating. That's why I put on this show, so that way we could have an opportunity to talk about politics, and people, if they have better points, could make them. And if they're not interested in doing that, they could at least find out what the heck is going on, because I know that on major news websites, they're not that interested in painting a analytical picture of what's going on or to give you a full view of what's happening behind the scenes, because they make money when there's not a real transparency. By maybe dramatizing or sensationalizing news stories, those guys are able to write anything they want and get paid for it, and people are buying their products, when meanwhile things just continue to get worse and worse. But we do have people trying to stand up and at least advance some sensible policy. Republican Kevin McCarthy has faced a humiliating series of setbacks today. I don't agree with that, Lon. It's just a setback. There's nothing wrong if people in your caucus disagree with you. But basically, Kevin McCarthy was not able to become the House Speaker. That just means that the government can pass more nonsense, pass more bills, pass all the bloated spend that we've been dealing with so long. And as this article says, basically the reason why he's being opposed is because Republicans like Scott Perry said, you have to make commitments to a balanced budget. Wouldn't that be? Well, right. And people are calling the Freedom Caucus flip-floppers, but perhaps that's true. But what other group of people is standing up for a balanced budget? You know, who else aside from Congressman Scott Perry is standing up for a balanced budget? There are other members in the Freedom Caucus that are, but I don't think that we can say without a doubt that Republicans across the board want a balanced budget, because if they did, you wouldn't have people like Mitch McConnell hanging out with Joe Biden on Wednesday. Okay. These guys want to do anything they can that's contrary to what ordinary people expect. This is not an extreme position to ask for a balanced budget. That's what he's asking people to commit to. Just like he's asking for a fair tax act, which would get rid of federal income, payroll, and estate taxes with a national sales tax. Wouldn't that be a novel idea? Instead of having all this money automatically taken out of your paycheck, you just tax for the things that you actually buy. Wouldn't that be great? Now, the one thing I don't agree with here that Congressman Perry is supporting is the imposition of term limits, and perhaps I'll do a deep dive on that later. But generally speaking, term limits just create a revolving door from Washington, D.C. to people becoming lobbyists or working in administrative agencies. And we see this in California. There's term limits in California, and yet it hasn't stopped career politicians in California from being career politicians. And heck, in California, particularly wealthy, as they have the highest rate for their state house. But hey, thank goodness for Congressman Perry. Hey, at least somebody, at least a Republican, is willing to go to bat on policy instead of the same old go along, get along nonsense that we see, or the hyper-inflammatory BS that ultimately amounts to nothing. At least they're taking a stand for something principled that would actually matter. So, hey, in my mind, major props to Congressman Scott Perry for standing up. And as I said, not that long ago, we have no way of auditing what's going over to Ukraine. And meanwhile, Zelensky signs controversial law to expand government power to regulate media. Wow. So in some ways, McCarthy's one of those anti-American MAGA Trump terrorists. Interesting, man. I don't really believe that. But hey, you're more than welcome to feel that way, invisible stranger. But I don't think being against, I don't think anybody disagreeing makes anybody anti-American. So if you're going to type that into the chat, no, I don't know. Anyhow, Zelensky, he supported the Trump Wacos. No, yeah, a lot of people supported Trump. I don't think that makes them terrorists. And you know, feel free to disagree on that, but I don't think that anything about "Make America Great Again" or that whole idea is terroristic. And so perhaps you can come on in to debate sometime, or we can talk about it. But I actually think that kind of rhetoric is what pushes people to the brink, and actually further riles tensions. Calling people who were not actually convicted of being a terrorist, well, terrorist, that's not doing anything to help anybody. Anyhow, as I mentioned, we're sending all this aid to Ukraine, and meanwhile, Zelensky is working on censoring the media. He signed legislation on Thursday over the objection of media unions and press freedom organizations, warning will have a chilling effect on free speech. In a statement last month, the National Union of Journalists of Ukraine said the bill posed a threat to press freedom in the country. So we have to send all this money overseas, so that way a gentleman can enact policy that will censor his own countrymen. Boy, I don't really think that's all that bold, but that's apparently where we are. So for those just joining us, we were talking about, well, right now we're in the portion of the show where we talk about national news and nonsense, and this is one of them. Zelensky signing a controversial law to expand government power to regulate media. And this is the same gentleman that happened to be at Congress. Does that mean members of Congress support regulating our media and our free press? I think that's a question worth asking, right? And meanwhile, so Zelensky is setting up a way to censor people. And meanwhile, the Central Intelligence Agency is creating a podcast with the director worrying that the public doesn't trust his spy agency. Well, it's a good thing that we have a thing called the Langley Files, which is an interview style podcast that's produced for the CIA's 75th anniversary. Is that something that should be celebrated? I think that's kind of weird. And it's really weird to do so publicly, because this is a spy agency. Like, why would a spy agency need a podcast? All Zelensky's worried about now is defending his country against Russia right now. As we have a commenter come in, well, yeah, sure, but that doesn't mean that he should be censoring people in his own country. You know, you can try to defend Zelensky, and perhaps in some aspects he should be defended. It's great that he's out there advocating for his own country, but as an American, I don't think it's a great thing where he's advocating for his country, and as a result, my country has to give him more money so he can censor his people. To me, that's nonsense. And it's even more nonsense when the CIA is running a podcast. You know, what's the point of that? And on that podcast, the two hosts don't even give their last name. Now that's a way to build trust. Good old CIA podcast. I'm actually looking forward to the IRS podcast with Lois Lerner. Now that they hired 80,000 plus people, perhaps the IRS can have a podcast and they can tell us what, make sure that you log any transaction over $600. Make sure that if you're a conservative organization that you file your paperwork properly, or else we're going to block you. We're going to audit you. We're going to track your movement. Crazy stuff. And the last two bits of national nonsense. This Twitter user, and I haven't totally confirmed this, Mr. Kelly Means, said that he consulted for Coca-Cola, not the Koch brothers, to ensure sugar taxes failed and soda was included in food stamp funding. And he said that all these policies about Coca-Cola were funded in backroom deals by apparently paying the NAACP and other civil rights groups to call anybody who disagreed with taxes racist. And so as a result, we as taxpayers have to subsidize people's addiction to sugar. We have all these big programs about addiction and trying to lose weight and all these problems, and yet our federal government is subsidizing it because Coca-Cola is subsidized by the government. And then with those extra subsidies, they're able to lobby civil rights groups to also lobby for them. So if you think lobbying is bad, think about what it is that Coca-Cola is doing. Not only do they have their own lobbyist to oppose taxes and to actually include sugar subsidies, they also use some backdoor means to turn organizations like the NAACP into lobbyist arms of Coca-Cola. As Kelly Mean says, we, Coke, we give you money. You need to paint opponents of us as racist. And apparently this was carried out between the 2011 and 2013. And that Coke's position was that, hey, soda's actually great for you because you can get great cheap calories. Hey, get your free calories because you're addicted to sugar. We're not that bad. You're just imagining things. So another shocker out there. Okay, and soda companies being embedded within the USDA. So basically, the USDA is big soda, which sounds like a conspiracy. Personally, I don't think that the soda taxes are going to do any bit of good. But I don't think that they should be included in SNAP, or I don't think that soda should be subsidized by taxpayers. And yet we have evidence to suggest that these big agencies in some way, shape, or form have been bought out by corporate interest. So for those of us, for those just joining, we're covering national news and nonsense. And the biggest bit of nonsense here, Coke using the NAACP to call its opponents racist. But perhaps no other fact, nothing else is more nonsensical than climate change. We have climate-related disasters killing even fewer people in 2022. If you look right at this chart, never before has there been so few climate-related deaths than in 2022. Isn't that incredible? The whole time we're told that global warming is going to destroy the world, nobody's really dying from global warming, or heck, even climate change. Interesting. So all these thousands of people that were saved, they throw that information out, and then they say, well, you guys have to believe in that so that way we can cancel oil and natural gas and make everybody buy solar panels for their home like what they do in California. And if that's not nonsense, I don't know what is. Because yes, even though there may indeed be climate change, the change matters less when you live in a society that can afford to improve its infrastructure so people can avoid the dangerous consequences of bad weather. And that's exactly what's happening. All that information is being overlooked. We'll go to our commenter here. Every time we get involved in foreign problems politically, we get burned. Zelensky also has a stake in it for his power and control. Yeah. He's not purely a good guy. I mean, he's censoring his own people or has expanded control. I don't think that's good. Heck, who knows? Maybe he'll start his own ministry of truth. That's what we got for national news and nonsense. I'll now turn it over to commentary. For our commentary today, I have a brand new idea. How about instead of making war, we focus on the middle class finally making money? That's right, folks. We should make money, not war. Each time in the last 100 years, we've gone to war, we've endorsed regime change, we put sanctions on foreign countries. We haven't made an ounce of money. We haven't made a single dime. So why not focus on making sure that the middle class is able to prosper and succeed? Why not enable the American people to make more of their own money and become more independent with less government? Instead, taxpayers are paying, in some cases, to keep control of the United States to sponsor foreign dictators, for Joe Biden to sell a record number of arms, or not record number, but a high number, forgive me, of arms across the globe. Why not make money? Novel idea, I know. But why can't we get back to making money? Why have we demonized the idea of making money to start with? At least making money the right way, not through war. You see, this issue, as we continue in the decades ahead, will only continue to get worse. In fact, the American people will not be able to make money if we continue to make war, issue sanctions, and insist on regime change overseas as more and more nations rise to middle power status. So it's time the United States gets back to reality, and our leadership gets back to reality and insist that we finally make money and not war. Likewise, with our politicians, they should help us make sense of what's going on and help us make money by being more honest and candid. In fact, with their radical lack of candor and honesty, we've actually seen that more coverage of dishonest politicians highlights the inadequacy of a transparent government. We've had transparent government for decades now, and the only thing that we've been able to see through that transparency is the sliminess, double dealing, and dishonesty of politicians nationwide. We need more than transparency. We need disagreement. We need debate. We need honesty. We need integrity. And when those things are lacking in Congress, we need people that are willing to step up and challenge the status quo, not become a part of it, not support it, not endorse it, and not enable it. You see, nothing is more inadequate than the transparency that we have today, because all we're seeing into is the emptiness of our political leaders. We need people to analyze. We need people to think, speak, and to become more articulate, not more transparency. In fact, if more people watch what's going on in Congress, the less that they'd want to see. Transparency in and of itself will always be inadequate, particularly when the transparency just gives us a view of the emptiness of our own politicians and, in some ways, our own humanity. Just as that moral bankruptcy and that inadequacy of transparency is making us more desperate as a nation. And that's why we're continuing the global hegemony, the military industrial complex. Because of the vast transparency, that's something that allowed us to veer into our own emptiness. all we've been able to do is become more and more desperate and more desirous to inflict punishment on other nations. And as things continue to get worse economically, socially, and in Congress, I expect more politicians, expect more presidents to lobby for war as a scapegoat for their own failure as leaders. You see, when there's a threat, or you can convince people that there's a threat at the front door, then you can get away and escape out the back door with deviant nonsense, with inadequate leadership, with bad policy. And for me, friends, that's happened for far too long. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Do you think we got great government, or are you satisfied with making war instead of money? Are you satisfied with having a transparent government that only allows you to peer into nonsense and BS? Are you satisfied that as our nation continues to get more desperate, we escalate for war with China? Is that what brings joy into your heart? If it does, I suggest that's perhaps not a heart, but a pit of frustration and anger. Let me know in the comments. Hey, good to hear from you, Mr. Linko. And now, for our final segment of the night, we have our bit on PA politics. And we will get to Pennsylvania politics. Well, we got something wacky going on here. Well, hey, Pennsylvania politics, we are getting to it. We'll just move on from here. Recently, a court decided that they're going to halt Larry Krasner's impeachment. Larry Krasner is the figure has been widely scapegoated as a sinister figure in Philadelphia, causing vast crime. To me, I'm not sure if that's true. I'm not sure if we can place all the blame for the crime on Larry Krasner himself or these progressive DAs. In fact, not too long ago, there was a story saying that the police in Philadelphia were the ones selling people guns. Illegal guns. The police in Philadelphia were selling illegal guns. So if you think the issue is all on Larry Krasner and he's going to be the symbol, and if we just get rid of him, things are going to clear up, I don't think that's true. Feel free to tell me otherwise. But he's not going to be taken out of office. The court said that they lack the constitutional authority to remove him, and that claims against him don't rise to the standard of misbehavior in office. I don't even know what the term misbehavior in office means, particularly after Bill Clinton. That's probably good behavior, I guess, in some people's eyes. He's allowed to get away with anything. He's super Bill. But this is what one of those things that when I'm talking about mentioning how transparency in politics is useless. Well, this highlights it. You had politicians go to culture war over Larry Krasner, and look at what it is that we got. It was halted in court. Boy, that's a winning electoral strategy. Let's go out there. Let's go out there and fight on issues that are going to get thrown out in court, and then say that we're heroes, and pat ourselves in the back. We're stopping crime. Well, you didn't. You didn't. So, but hey, that's just one of the many great things going on. Our commenter here said not enough Americans involved in policy, or they don't care about the country, but they do care about their culture issues. That's right, Bill. And I think that the culture issues have been exaggerated in order to, in many ways, keep people preoccupied with or distracted from finding their own happiness. It's hard to be happy if you think that you got to go on a a culture war crusade to stop your Democrat neighbor or your Republican neighbor. Very hard to pursue happiness under that standard, for sure. Just like we got, well, we got two very interesting stories about PA politics here. Eugene DePasquale, our favorite friend, who lost to Congressman Scott Perry, the leader of the Freedom Caucus, is trying to make a comeback. He said he may come back as Auditor General, Mr. Eugene DePasquale. And basically what that means, or not, forgive me, not Auditor, Attorney General. And basically what that means here in Pennsylvania is that he wants to become Attorney General and then use that as a way to become governor of Pennsylvania so he can then run for president following the Josh Shapiro trajectory. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Eugene DePasquale probably will run for Attorney General. In another decade later, he'll probably run for governor. On a good note, hey, we celebrate farmers and their hard work with Farm Show starting this weekend in Harrisburg. Yes, right, Bill. That's a great thing. Perhaps that's what I should try to include show with. Such a good note, but it is hard. But on the other hand, if people were totally satisfied, there would be no need for politics at all. So I don't think that because some of this stuff is bad news or not, that's a bad thing. That's the nature of politics. That's the nature of life. It's not the peaceable and contented that change the world. It's the discontents who are interested in figuring out what's going on. As I mentioned before, there's too many agreeable people out there, and we need those who are disagreeable and interested to really get to the bottom of what's happening here. Just like Mark Rossi being named Speaker of the House. So in Pennsylvania politics, there was a contentious debate between Speaker Brian Cutler and the Democrats about who was going to have the majority of the House so they could appoint a speaker. And that speaker turned out to be Mr. Mark Rossi from Berks County. And so not only did he win that position, but he has pledged to become an independent speaker and will actually be the House's first independent speaker. So that should be very, very interesting. He'll be the first independent House speaker, leaving the Democrats, and basically Republicans and Democrats will be at a 101 tie in the General Assembly. So it should be interesting to see what comes out of the new independent Pennsylvania House. And that's all we got. We covered it all. We covered the globe in just a single hour. Meantime, if you guys do want to help out, go to ko-fi.com. Keep us live and running. Just a simple $3 donation will allow us to reach more people and spread the news. Make sure that we have informed voters instead of ones who are confused and vote on the basis of their feelings. You could help out by buying us a cup of coffee at the link below. In the meantime, hey, we talk politics tonight. We talk politics every night, but we'll really talk most next week, Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. right here on Facebook Live and YouTube. You can follow me at Z-Reichenbach1 on Twitter and go to Now Talk Politics on Facebook. In the meantime, we do want to thank you so much for joining us. And we hope that you have an excellent rest of your night. We hope you have a happy new year. Great. We will see y'all next week.